Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror and detail, the realm where the shadows whisper ancient secrets and nightmares come to life. I am your guide through the darkness, and on this channel, we delve into the spine-chilling world of Wendigo horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. First story, the Wendigo. I'm writing this from a small motel just outside Green Bay. Something has been stalking, or more accurately hunting me. I don't know what to do, and that's why I'm asking you to help. You all know the legend of the Wendigo, right? Maybe you know it by Wendigo. Algonquian legends describe this entity as a man-devouring beast native to the Atlantic coast and Great Lakes region, as well as parts of Canada. I think this is what's stalking me. It started happening when I moved into my summer cabin past Green Bay. Little things happened at first. My dogs would bark into the woods, but I would see nothing. I didn't think much of it, just that it could be a deer or mountain lion. That didn't worry me because I'm a native Yooper, U.P. of Michigan native, and have had previous hunting experience. Mostly this would happen and my dogs would growl into the woods, but then seemingly forget about it, go romp around the cabin. Then came the night. As I lay in bed one night, I heard shuffling outside my window. My curtains were closed, but the window itself was open. My breathing hitched as I saw a shadow standing outside my window. Just know that the cabin doesn't have a high ceiling, so the windows are low, so I'm not sure the exact size of this creature. I lay frozen as bed as the shadow stayed there for what seemed like centuries, but could only have been a few minutes. Soon, the creature the shadow belonged to shuffled away, but not without emitting a guttural growl. This happened every night for the next 3 days. It would appear, stay, and then leave. After the third night of this, I woke up and went to check on my 2 hounds, Eleanor and Chip. I walked around to the back of the cabin where they slept curled up in their makeshift dog houses. I froze and felt my stomach rise up to my throat when I reached their spot. Blood was spattered everywhere, and body parts lay strewn all over the yard. Eleanor's figure lay disfigured and torn apart, next to Chip's quivering body. He, thankfully, was unharmed, but shocked and in quite a mental state. What monster would do this? I thought despairingly. No bear or mountain lion would dismember a dog like this. I knew what had done this. The creature that stood outside my window every night. The strangest thing, however, wasn't the spattered blood and gore, but the pearly white flap of skin next to my dog's corpse. Good old girl didn't go down without a fight. I picked it up and turned it around in my hands. One side was an almost translucent pearly skin, and on the other a light bluish blood, I think. I dropped it immediately and ran back inside. I grabbed my old hunting rifle and my pack, which contained some food, water, and other camping necessities. The nearest highway was due north, but 38 miles, but I wanted out of these woods before nightfall. That's when it comes. During night. In the daytime it stays in the woods, always watching, always following. I let Chip loose and we set off due east, where I knew a small town was less than 25 miles away. I could make it, but I would have to haul ass if I didn't want to die. Me and Chip walked for the first half of our journey, and then we ran. We made it to the town right before sunset, if you can even call it a town. There's a gas station, a motel, and a couple summer cabins by the lake. As we emerged from the woods, I heard the scariest sound of my life. The roar was deafening and pissed off. I knew that this wasn't the end of the game this son of a bitch was playing, but for me, tonight was enough. I am now staying at the motel, where the only residents are the owner, a runaway teen, and me. As far as I know, we could be the only people in this residence. I'm scared, so scared. I can feel it watching me, waiting, hunting. If I can survive another day, I will check in. But for now I cannot fall asleep. The deadbolts on my door will not protect me, and Chip has started to growl at the door. I have survived yet another night from this beast that roams the woods of the Great Lakes. Thank you so much for your support and input. I know many of you have been wondering why I didn't drive out of there like I had the hounds of hell on my trail. One very important detail that I forgot to mention was that I had my friend drop me off. I wanted to have a more authentic rustic experience and to get away from the city. My friend, let's call him Mark, was supposed to drive up every 2 days to check on me since he has a camp not too far away. Only, he never showed. He dropped me off and then he vanished. I knew something must have happened to him because he was the type of guy you could rely on, and I had known him since first grade and he never flaked. Even though his cabin wasn't too far away, I decided not to risk it. I knew something must have happened to him and his wife. As soon as I get some answers from this god-forsaken town, I'm going back to look for him. He would have done the same for me. I tried calling him from the phone in the office of the motel I'm staying at. No answer. Back on topic, all through the night I heard growling. At times it would sound distant, and at others close. I woke up to find long scratches on my motel door. I wonder why it didn't just tear it down and come get me. But it wants to play. I think it's because I might have woken it up. I don't know how or when, just that it's awake and coming after me. This morning, the creature left me a surprise. Eleanor's collar. It's a simple band of leather with her name inscribed on it. That fucker is going to pay. I have to get rid of it, even I don't survive. First it took my dog, and then my best friend. But no more. I woke up and walked around town for a bit, my rifle on my back and Chip by my side for protection. It turns out this town used to be larger, but when the stock market crashed, almost everybody left and never came back. Or so the motel owner tells me. He seems strange though. He's skittish and is always looking off into the woods. The lights outside the motel are always on, and he keeps the doors to all the rooms locked. He's either hiding something or knows what's following me. I think it's both. I know this might sound stupid, but I might try to break into his office. There's something in there that can help me. I know it. Maybe I won't though. I have the feeling that he could be a dangerous enemy. The kid that's here is most definitely a runaway. She cropped black hair, tons of black eyeliner, and lots of gothic black clothes. I wonder why she ran away. I don't think she knows anything. She said she hitched a ride here from a truck driver, and I don't think she's lying. Despite her efforts to look tough, she has a soft voice. She wasn't meant to be like this. Her name is Mason. Thank God she's safe though. Who knows what could have happened with a truck driver? Yes, I know not all of them are pervs, but come on, you've seen the movies. She's staying in the room next to mine. I'm glad because I'll be able to keep an eye on her, but I'm also scared for her. I can't imagine if anything happened to her because of me and what I have awoken. My parental skills are kicking in even though I've never had children. Chip hasn't slept since we got here. He stayed up all night pacing and growling at the door. I didn't get any sleep last night. I have dark shadows under my eyes because I refuse to fall asleep. I'm pretty sure he can smell the decaying flesh of the beast that is hunting us and has killed Eleanor. I can't bear to watch him suffer. I know that he misses Eleanor. Ido. My dogs were the only family I had left. Now, it's just Chip and me. My father died when I was a little girl. It was on a hunting trip. They say he must have been attacked by a wild animal because his body was never recovered. I'm starting to think I might be reliving his experience. Right now, Chip and my rifle are my only source of protection. I'm going to look for sources of fire later. The gas station looks new, but the lights haven't been on and I haven't seen anybody in there. There might be gas and supplies that I can use to kill this motherfucker. That is, before it gets me. I just hope I can save myself and this little girl before it's too late. I still have no idea what woke it up. Could it have been already awake? Maybe I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I prayed last night. Why, God? Why me? Why would you let a creature this ferocious and demonic be born? Why let it roam the earth? What have I done to deserve this? Why, God? Why? As I walked around town, I noticed none of the other buildings had scratches. Even Mason didn't hear any growling or had scratches on her doors. It's eerie. It's like I'm the only one who can see and hear this beast. Or maybe the others are just pretending. I plan on looking into this town's past. They have to have had something to do with this creature. It's impossible that they haven't. I need to rest, but I am too afraid to close my eyes. I am afraid of what will come and slit my throat in my sleep, of what will devour me, bones and all. I am slowly being driven insane by the utter madness of this situation. I can't take it anymore. I need this to end, and I'm going to be the one to end it. I will try to check in as soon as I can or when I get new information on this hell creature. Thank you for your support. I don't know how much more of this madness I can take. I thought I had it all figured out. Turns out IT's smarter than I think, than anyone thinks or could possibly imagine. What could I possibly have done to wake this beast? I am writing to you in hopes that one day, someone will be able to kill it. I don't know if I can, if I am smart or strong enough. Last night was the worst night so far. It finally fed on human flesh. For the last 2 days, I have been trying to figure out how to kill this bastard. Fire. That's the answer. I had a plan. I had found gasoline, matches, and even an old couple sticks of dynamite. How lucky was I? Turns out back in the 1900s this town was famous for coal mining. There's even a couple of coal mines that weren't closed off. I thought I had it all figured out. So did that son of a bitch. It was nearing dusk yesterday, and I had everything laid out. It wasn't a super fancy trap or anything, but it would do the deed and kill this demon. At dusk, I was ready and waiting for it to come. I knew it would. It always does. My trap was set right in the outskirts of the woods. I wanted to keep the motel owner and the stowaway kid out of this. I found enough dynamite to make 4 small piles. I placed them in ring and connected them all with some spare cord that I found. Hopefully this would work. I sat in the middle of the circle and waited, my trusty rifle at my side. I also had multiple knives on me hidden beneath my shirt and in my boots. Soon I heard growling that seemed to be getting closer and closer. Then it stopped and all was quiet. I don't mean peaceful silence. I mean dead silence. No birds chirping or squirrels running around in the trees. It's like they knew what was coming and were trying to save themselves. Leaves start to crunch and twigs snap. The growling resumes, but it sounds like it's coming from all directions. I stood up and braced myself the best I could. Who can prepare you for the moment you must fight a beast descended from the fires of hell itself? Then, it emerged from the woods. I cannot describe how horrifying this creature was. I wanted to close my eyes and curl up in a ball until this whole thing was over with. I almost did. But then I stopped myself and decided that I wouldn't let this beast harm any other people. I wasn't trying to play hero. I was trying to save myself. This creature was entombed in decaying yellow skin. Its glowing yellow eyes stared into mine and I felt my bones shake. The Wendigo loomed over me. Its sharp fangs were leering at me, almost laughing, as if saying, "Ha ha, what now?" I snapped myself out of my fear-induced stupor and ran to the nearest pile of dynamite. I pulled my pack of matches out and tried to get one lit. My hands were shaking so bad that it took 3 tries. The Wendigo slowly stalked towards me on its towering legs. I dropped the match on the pile and waited for fireworks. No such luck. The match sputtered and died as it landed just to the side of the dynamite wick. My heart dropped. I was certainly doomed. I had it all planned out that I didn't expect anything to go wrong. I looked around for the patch of matches that had fallen out of my hand when the creature batted me aside with a swipe of its paw. Blackness. When I regain consciousness, I see the Wendigo peering over me. There is a long gash along my left leg, put there by its monstrous teeth. I groan and try to sit up. Soon, I find the beast on top of me snarling and spitting in my face. I find one of the hunting knives I had hidden on me and plunge it as far as it'll go before crawling away. I look at the creature and find the hilt sticking from where its stomach should be. Grayish-blue blood is oozing from the wound. The beast roars in pain. "Hey, what's going dash?" That sentence is cut off as the Wendigo lunges for Mason, the runaway kid. With a single swipe of his clawed hand, the creature tears into the kid's chest, chunks of flesh ripping away. The look on Mason's face will haunt me forever. It was pure fear and surprise. The poor kid never saw it coming. I scream in frustration as I try to get the nearest pile of dynamite. I reach it and frantically search the ground for a match and feel a minuscule sense of hope as I find one. I strike it against the nearest rock and toss it onto the pile. I stand up on my legs and groan as I hobble away. The force of the explosion pushes me to the ground. Despite the dull ringing in my ears, I can hear a blood-curdling shriek. I look into the flames and see the dancing figure of the hell creature. Red and orange engulf its body as it is burned. I lay down among the ferns and brush that coat the forest floor. I closed my eyes and drifted off. You must be thinking by now that I killed it, that the Wendigo is dead. When I come to, I get up and make my way to the burned patch of land. I look around for any sign of a corpse, but find none. Not even bones. I could have been naive and assumed that the ashes scattered on the ground were from the beast, but I knew better. It probably ran off back to where it came from to nurse its injuries. I know that there is a good possibility that it'll come back. Of course, I'll be long before that does happen. I have since made it back home. I am never going back to that cabin. Let it sit there and rot. A reminder of the constant sorrow that can lie in these woods among the beauty. Let it remind people of nature's dark side. I am thinking of having a memorial for Mason. And Eleanor. Chip is okay. I had left him in the motel room before I embarked on the hunt. I couldn't lose him. He's the only family I have left. I am okay. I will be. At least until it comes again. This time, I will be ready.
Second STPRY.
Canadian horror story. Let me start by saying Canada has a lot of land that is free for people to camp on for a while before needing to move to another area. It is called Crown Land. And it is generally a fun way to camp during the summer, so me two good friends of mine, Jay and A, decided to bring our kayaks out to a small island for the night. The island even had a public barbecue on it, but we were sticking with the fire pit for roasting hot dogs, etc. Bringing an extra propane tank over in a kayak would be a nightmare anyways. It took us most the afternoon for the three of us to get across the lake and get back onto dry land, and the sun was already setting by the time we dragged our kayaks onto the island and got cozy near the campfire. We set up our tent before it got too dark and started the fire for dinner. We noticed some more fires through the trees on shore, which is fairly common considering the million cottages and summer homes along the side of the lake. A was annoying as usual and kept going on about the other fires after it got dark, joking about forest fires, etc. Me and Jay shrugged off his lame jokes and tried to enjoy the crisp air and beautiful stars, since this was his first time on an overnight kayaking trip and I wanted it to be nice for him. A says something along the lines of, "Is that a person watching us?" while pointing to a fire along the swampy shore. Our island wasn't very far from a swampy forest even a very weak swimmer could reach. I scoffed at him and realized he wasn't just joking around in nearly the same instant, because when I turned to look I seen it too. It was clearly a human silhouette watching us from the lakeside with a fire burning from some sort of torch or stick. The person didn't budge an inch even after we waved and called out to them, which was very unnerving. I tried rationalizing it as a grumpy old local who wasn't happy to have us partying near his cottage since we have a million of those on our lake. This fucking person stood there for hours as we drank and smoked and joked without even sitting down to rest. Jay isn't afraid to get confrontational and was the first to shout something nasty at the figure. The fire goes out and for a few minutes everything seems normal. I had almost forgotten about the figure when a loud metal crash came from the direction of where the figure was. The sound was very much like some sort of animal trap/cage being rattled and was followed by several splashes in the water. Everybody is obviously nervous now, so I pretend to be calm in an attempt to maintain my woodsman persona. I get 3 big sticks from the woodpile for each of us to hold if anything happens. I also always have a small Swiss Army knife in my pocket as a last resort. Jay wasn't content with just a stick and grabbed some rocks from nearby to throw at anything that comes near us. I was the first to notice them hiding amongst the trees just beyond the light of our fire. It started as rustling leaves and strange, snorting noises and chattering, but I turned my head fast enough to see one watching me with its horrible and eyeless face from a tree branch. It was about the size of a rabbit or raccoon and shaped identical to an otter with an eyeless oval head and a wrinkled nose like a bat or a pig. I will never forget all the snarling teeth and the eyeless stare it showed me before darting down the tree and into the darkness. I had never seen anything like it in my entire life, and it made my heart twitch. It had no eyes, but was clearly aware of our presence. I lied to Jay and about what I'd seen. I told them my own shadow scared me, and I was just seeing things. They told me the same thing, and we all decided it was time to pack up early and get home as soon as possible despite how dangerous it is to kayak at night. We forgot a lot of things in our anxious rush to get the hell off that island, and we were surrounded by strange chattering noises the entire time we packed our stuff away into our kayaks. It only got worse during the ride home. Whatever I seen followed us and splashed behind us in the water, even scratching the bottom of my kayak several times until we were several miles away and the sun had started to rise. Our fear-fueled adrenaline wore off once we actually got back on the mainland and we struggled to carry our kayaks home. Small town, so the marina/boat launch I use is very close, thankfully. It wasn't until after we all got a good sleep that we talked about what each of us had seen. Both of them described seeing those slender creatures and hearing the strange, chattering noises. A even claimed to see the shadowy figure several more times during the night after it disappeared, but never said anything at the time. Jay has not went camping ever since. It's been a few years. I am haunted by the event and rarely go outside at night now. Not because I think I know what is out there, but because what I seen is entirely unknown to me. Third story. Wendigo. My best friend is a Wendigo. Madison and I were lounging in the grass of the backyard, enjoying the last of the late autumn sun. She was busy playing with her toys, throwing them about as if she were sprinkling snowflakes. I, on the hand, was comfortable in my mom's lounge chair, trying to finish this book I kept putting off. It's Wendigo, not Wendigo. A dingo is a dog in Australia. I didn't take my eyes off the page. Jason ran for the knife, but tripped over his own feet, falling desperately onto the sand. But he is one. Madison's whiny 7-year-old voice drew my gaze. She was a pretty child with chestnut hair. Big cheeks and even bigger eyes made her popular amongst her peers and their mothers. I don't know where she got those genes from. I was her big sister, and I was never so cute. There was always something awkward about my face. Maybe it was the thin nose or the puckered eyes. I kept to myself mostly, choosing to live in fiction rather than reality. Where did you hear that word? I asked, scanning the page one more time. Jason's taut muscles pushed against the creature, locked in a struggle he may never escape from. Madison shrugged. I think you said it one time. About a book you were reading. I laughed. Oh yeah, that terrible fake Native American romance book. God, what was it called? I recounted the piles of books that littered my room. The Wendigo's Yearning, I said finally. What a trashy book. What is a Wendigo? Madison rose from the ground, brushing off her dress. She came over to me and put her little hand on my arm. I quickly finished my paragraph before setting the book down. It was all over. Jason would never breathe in the summer air again. Well, a Wendigo is a bad spirit. Like a monster. It wants to eat people. Madison frowned. So it's not nice? I raised my eyebrows.
No, Madison.
It is not nice. It looks like a skeleton, almost really thin and always hungry. It eats humans because it wants to be full, but it can never be full. So it just keeps eating and eating. Madison took her hand off my arm and tapped it against her head. Does it like to play? You're being weird. I picked my book up again. The creature descended upon Jason's hard body, ripping the flesh away like newspaper. Well, I think you're wrong. Wendigos don't eat people. He didn't eat me. Jason's blood tasted sweet as the creature licked clean his insides. I rolled my eyes. You don't know a Wendigo. And your best friend is a little boy, not a monster. He used to be a little boy, she replied, turning away from me and walking towards the woods that lay beyond our yard. Madison, come back? The creature slurped down Jason's intestines. She didn't listen to me. I sighed. I'll tell Mom you went in the woods. As the creature gnawed on the final bone, it began to grow taller. Madison ignored me. When she reached the tree-line, I groaned and got up. The creature would only become bigger as it ate. Madison, you're going to be in big trouble. I bet Mom will make you go to bed without dinner. She turned around, now shouldered by trees. I want you to meet him. Then you'll see. She held her hand out to side and grabbed a hold of the nearest tree branch. I was going to respond when I realized that the branch was also holding on to her. As I neared them, it was clear that this was no tree at all. It was a tall creature, extremely thin and bony, matching the color of the foliage. Its face was turned down, but I could see saliva-dripping teeth. Madison just smiled. This is my Wendigo. I knew I should have ran to her, but instead I tore back towards the house. I could hear large steps behind me, but I didn't stop. I opened and slammed the door, locking it. My breath was heavy. I looked out the window and saw Madison still holding its hand as they moved closer and closer. My mom entered the room. What are you doing? She asked sweetly. It's Madison. She is with I don't know, a monster. My mom peered out the window. She smiled and winked at me. That's just her Wendigo. Don't worry, honey. He's harmless. She turned to go back to whatever she was doing, and I gasped in horror. The entire backside of her torso had been hollowed out, licked clean. Yet she still walked away, leaving a small mucus trail as it dripped from her exposed flesh. Madison was now knocking on the door, giggling. Let us in, sis. My Wendigo is hungry. Fourth story. Gawa forests are scary. I have a creepy story as well. In fact, I'd totally forgotten about it until I started reading these SAR stories and thought, well, myself and 4 friends were camping in central/northern Ontario, Canada one random weekend. It had been a beautifully hot and sunny summer, and we'd never all been camping together. Tons separately, but never together. We drove in separate cars because we had to leave at different times. In fact, I drove my parents' caravan at the time. Anyways, I'm driving myself and two of my closest friends, listening to some Dallas Green and some Jack Johnson, just inducing the chillest of vibes for our trip. We finally make it to the campsite and our other two friends, my now friend and his wife, are already there with their shite set up and a fire going and some dinner being prepped for us. It was pretty sweet. The first night nothing eventful happened, but the second night got weird. We'd been up drinking since basically breakfast and had a pretty awesome day. We'd been boating on a small lake and had tried a hand at fishing, but the lake was essentially barren. We'd gotten back to our campsite, gotten a little bit more tipsy, and made ourselves a wonderfully burnt campfire dinner. Parties started going all over, and we were close enough to one of the major beaches nearby to hear the insane party that was going on. We were too drunk to locate it and make our way there, but we didn't care. Well, I kind of cared because around 1 in the morning my buddy and I want to go to sleep in our tiny little tent, and we couldn't because of all the music and potentially sexy girls we heard screaming infrequently. Now, here's where things get weird. After a couple of tosses and turns, neither of us can sleep. My friend and I are just shooting the shit, whispering, when all of a sudden we simultaneously realize that we can't hear anything outside of our tent anymore. Then this weird buzzing sound is being emanated from what seems like somewhere in the sky, but appears to be relocating at a ridiculous speed.
For example, top right corner 1 second, right beside us the next, top left corner thereafter, etc.
This strange buzzing went on for what felt like maybe 30 or 40 minutes. We were entirely freaked out. There weren't any lights or anything, and we didn't actually feel anything nearby, neither metaphorically or physically, but it was there, and we heard it, and it had a tangible effect on our brains. And we both heard it, which made me feel more sane. The sound eventually faded, and the sounds of partying slowly made their way back to its normal volume. Like when you bring your television down to 0, and then gradually increase the volume. Kind of like that. Not how normal sounds are supposed to work. Granted, they hadn't been working at all. But I digress. Eventually the music and unfortunately the girls started to dissipate, and I eventually fell asleep. I woke up suddenly, and as a lot of people here describe something felt off. I moved ever so slightly to see my friend lying on his back with his eyes wide open, and we both look at each other and slowly nod. Neither of us said a word to each other. Suddenly something brushed up against my side of the tent. Of course. So now at this point I'm freaking out in my head. And then we hear a very low, guttural sort of sound. Not really a growl, so to speak, but kind of like if your stomach made noise, but deeper, and if you could do it on purpose. I guess. It pretty much tilted me right then and there. Whatever this thing was continued to hang around our tent. At some point it made distinct breathing noises, and then what sounded like maybe sniffing. Either way, we were royally freaked out. Whatever it was eventually left, and we started freaking out to each other because of what had happened earlier, and now we're being sized up for rape by a giant black bear. As far as we were concerned, but then the sounds took our adolescent brains in a different direction. Like, what if those sky sounds were something completely different and had left someone to check everything out before it left? Gah. Sleeping was rough for the rest of the night. I was happy, kind of, to have awoken to the sight of a black bear and a bear cub on a distant ridge maybe 400 yards away. We all stopped to gawk for a while and appreciate the majesty of bears. I have a strange affinity for bears.
Saw thee.
We'd been prepping breakfast and taking our equipment down when my friend brought up the noises and animalistic sounds from last night, and expected everyone to kind of say, "Yeah, wasn't that weird?" But no one had heard anything. Anything. They only heard the partying and had fallen asleep after it had all started to dissipate early in the morning. So for what felt like 30 minutes we were hounded by this weird, fast-moving sound that projected an incredibly strange, buzzing sound that cut the rest of the world off from us, and then were harassed by rapist bears, and one could corroborate what we were feeling. It was really freaking strange, and my simple brain can't think of anything as to what the buzzing could have been. I'll accept that the second set of sounds was potentially the bear, despite the fact that it didn't sound like any bear I'd ever seen or heard before. But I was tired and a little more than happy with my alcohol consumption. Needless to say, forests can suck just as much as they can be awesome. Anyone else experience anything similar? Would be cool to see if anyone else heard some similar creepy, world-cutting off buzzing. Thanks for reading, everyone. P.S. I did not intend for a wall of text. In fact, I intended for a very short story with all the important points summarized neatly. Unfortunately, I talk a lot IRL, and that apparently translates to my comments and the like on Reddit.
Oops de.
Edit. Words, grammar, sentence crafting, etc. Fifth story. In the forests of Canada lurks a monster. Our camping group was unfortunate enough to become its prey. It was a beautiful fall morning as we drove through the small towns and rural communities dotting Nova Scotia. We weren't locals to the area, but we had heard of some great camping areas in the vast forests around the province, and it was the first time our friend group got together for a trip in almost 10 years, so we wanted to make it a good one. We had driven from the city to go on a camping trip, 7 of us in 2 vehicles. As we drove through the rural countryside, Dylan, the eldest of the group, spoke up. "It's nothing like Toronto, is it, guys?" We all agreed. It was nothing like Ontario, for that matter. The Nova Scotia countryside was breathtaking, full of personality and culture. As Matt May's Tall Trees blared over the radio, we were growing increasingly excited for the next few nights we'd spend in the woods. Richie was sitting in the back of my crew cab Silverado sipping on a Molson Canadian and singing along to the radio. I hadn't seen him in such a good mood in years. He seemed to be finally getting over his divorce and enjoying himself for once. Richie and I were childhood friends, and after his wife left him, we were roommates in the city. We were like brothers. I'd seen the man suffer so badly, and it was good to see him smile. Dylan's girlfriend, Erica, was up front with me, sleeping with the seat slightly back, and Dylan sat in the back drinking beers with Richie. Dylan was a skilled hiker and outdoorsman like myself, but Erica was not so much. This was only her 2nd or 3rd time in the deep woods, but she really loved it. "Soon time for a piss break?" Richie piped up. "Maybe if you didn't start drinking beers before we even hit the highway, you wouldn't need to piss every 5 minutes, Dylan chuckled. "All right, fuck it. Give the others a shout and tell them we're pulling over at the next dirt road," I said. I needed to stretch my legs anyway. It was a long drive and my back was starting to hurt. We called the rest of the group and pulled over. As we pulled off onto a dirt road and piled out of the truck, the others came in close behind in their Jeep Wrangler. The doors swung open and out came Mary Ann, Elizabeth, Robert. Mary Ann and Elizabeth were best friends. Even after all these years of knowing them, I couldn't believe how beautiful they were. They looked like 2 supermodels. Robert was from BC, and we'd only met him a couple years back, but he fit in with us so fast it was like he was always there. "How's everyone doing?" Robert said, with a large grin across his face. He was what you'd call a hippie, and always brought a boatload of psychedelics on our camping trips. He lit up a large joint and began passing it around. I spoke up. "We're good, man. Erica's still sleeping in the truck. How are you guys?" "Great," he exclaimed. "Fucking great, man. I could tell from the look on his face he'd already gotten into the sheet of blotter acid in his backpack. As the others chatted, I went with Richie to check the dump of the tuck to make sure we had all our supplies. 2 giant coolers full of food and drinks, fire starting gear, axes, knives, first aid kits, tools, bear spray. It was all there. We glanced around to make sure no one could see us from the road, and Richie and I pulled out the 2 guns we'd taken with us. An SKS rifle with about 60 rounds of ammunition, and a 12-gauge pump-action Mossberg with about 25 rounds of buckshot. The last time we'd been camping, we had a close encounter with a bear and nothing to defend ourselves with. So this time we made sure we did. You can never be too safe in the forests around here. We checked the maps. We were getting close. Only another hour or so, and we'd be driving into the woods. Then it was a day's hike and we'd be at our chosen campground, a decent-sized clearing in the woods next to a freshwater lake. We'd planned to stay for a couple of days and hike back out. We had plenty of supplies. The rest of the trip went by pretty fast, and before we knew it, we were loading up our equipment and walking. We'd spent most of the day hiking through the woods, stopping for smoke breaks and once to eat. I checked the GPS, and we were getting nearer to our final destination. Some of the group noticed things in the woods along the way. They looked like small native totems, dolls, carvings, odds and ends hanging from the trees. This must have been a native hunting ground or something, we figured. We left the totems and ornaments where we found them. As we came upon the clearing, the sun was just beginning to set. We set up our camp and were preparing for our first night there. We turned on some music on the battery-powered stereo that Dylan brought, cooked up a barbecue over an open fire, and started to really get into the beers. Robert pulled out the sheet of blotter acid, and we all took a hit. We spent the rest of the evening and night sitting around the fire, listening to music, drinking and smoking and laughing like maniacs at the tricks the LSD played on our brains. Little did we know all of the noise we were making attracted something none of us had ever seen before. I retreated to my tent with Richie, Elizabeth, and Mary Ann while the others went to Dylan's tent. Mary and Elizabeth looked at me and Richie and Mary and said, "I think I know a way to help you get over that ex-wife of yours, Rich," with a huge grin plastered across her face. Elizabeth came over to me and leaned close. We started kissing. Richie and Marian done the same. Just as things were starting to heat up in the tent, we heard a scream from the other one. It sounded like Erica. The other tent was pegged up closer to the woods, while we pegged up down near the lake, about 100 meters apart. Richie and I hopped up, and both of our eyes fixated on the guns in the corner. We had them both. The other tent was supposed to have one. Fuck. We grabbed the guns and told the girls to stay put, and we hastily loaded them while running towards the other tent. We heard Erica scream again, and by the time we got there, everyone was outside. We all had our flashlights on. "What's going on? What's wrong?" I yelled. Erica was in tears near the tent, holding on to Dylan for dear life. She was muttering something about an animal in the woods. We finally managed to get her to calm down enough to tell us what was wrong. She stammered on, "I got up to pee, and when I did, it was behind the tree, and it touched my shoulder." "What was behind the tree, Erica?" Dylan said firmly, but calmly. "I don't fucking know," she yelled. "It was tall and bony, and it had really long claws. It was covered in blood." I pulled Robert aside. "Man, how much fucking acid did you give her?" None, man," Robert said nervously. "She didn't want any." "Was she asleep before this?" I asked. "Yeah, I think so," Robert said. "She must have been dreaming or some shit, man. Here, take the shotgun anyway. Calm her down and dash." Then we heard it. Elizabeth and Marian screamed, but it wasn't the same. It stopped abruptly. We knew right away something was wrong. A sense of terror washed over all of us. The adrenaline kicked in and Robert and I ran for the tent, but when we did it was torn to pieces. When we looked inside, so were the girls. I felt something sour crawl up from my stomach and into my mouth as I looked upon the mangled women that were lying before us. Elizabeth was still alive and was begging me to help her. The helpless look on her eyes shot through me as I noticed both of her legs were missing and her insides were hanging out. Marianne was missing an arm and her head, and was almost torn clean in two vertically. I turned and looked at Robert, and all I seen was shock in his eyes. I turned around and vomited. Robert couldn't look away. We yelled for the first aid kit, and the rest of the group came running. We sat and held Elizabeth's hand as she begged us not to let her die. Erica, who was a registered nurse, ran up, but once she seen the extent of the wounds, her hand shot over her mouth and she dropped the first aid kit. After a moment, she collected herself and began giving first aid while looking at the rest of us hopelessly. Within 5 minutes, Elizabeth was gone. Richie began to yell through his tears, "Fuck! Fuck! What the fuck happened to them?" We all began trying to talk over one another in panicked confusion. Dylan hadn't said a word. "Enough!" he yelled, and again louder, "Enough!" Everyone went silent. It looks like a bear maybe got into the tent. It's probably still around. We need to hunker down at the other tent and wait till daylight. It's our only hope. We've been checking our phones, but we lost service hours ago. We were cut off. We took the rest of our supplies and ran back to the other tent. As we did, we heard a horrible screeching in the woods. It sounded almost human, but way too animalistic. Too loud and shrill. "Oh man, it's a fucking Wendigo," Robert blurted out. "My grandfather told me about them. They eat people in the woods, and it's coming to fucking kill us." Richie blurted out, "It's a fucking bear or something, man. It's not no urban legend. And if it comes anywhere near us, we're gonna shoot it dead." He snatched the shotgun out of Robert's hand and walked over to light a fire. "We'll be able to see it better if we got lots of light on the woods." Whatever it was watching us, patiently waiting. We could hear it go back up to the other tent and drag something out. The bodies. The poor girls. The woods grew eerily cold and quiet. We sat there around the fire with our guns trained on the woods. I had the SKS rifle in my hand, fully loaded, and Richie had the shotgun. It was moving around us, and we could almost catch glimpses with our flashlights, but it was much too fast. Branches snapped as the monster stalked around us, growling and snarling. The rest of the crew pulled out the axes and knives and stayed behind us, with all of our backs to the lake. Silence. The silence went on for what felt like eternity. Then we heard it. Elizabeth's voice. "Help me, please. Richie, Sam, Robert, somebody help me." It didn't sound natural. It sounded like her, but in a way it didn't. "This is impossible. We watched her die." Dylan yelled. "How is she still alive?" He took off for the woods, in the direction of the voice. I couldn't grab him, and he ignored our pleas to come back. "I'm going to get Elizabeth. She's still alive." Those were his final words. We shone our flashlights on him as he went past the tree line, and that's when we saw it. A large, pale gray creature lunged forward. It had lifeless eyes, long, mottled, black and gray hair, and long, slender claws which it dug into Dylan's flesh. It must have been 8 feet tall at least. Its long, gnarled teeth showed as it screamed in Dylan's face before tearing into his throat. All we could do was watch on in horror. Dylan fell to his knees as the creature began ravaging him, tearing him to pieces. It looked like a large, emaciated humanoid, but it appeared to have incredible strength. Richie and I opened fire as soon as we realized Dylan was dead, and there was no saving him. The bullets tore through its flesh, but it did not react. Instead, it pulled Dylan's mangled corpse into the woods as it took off running, letting out loud screeches as it ran, breaking limbs off of trees like toothpicks. Richie and I both emptied our weapons into the beast, and it didn't even faze it. Erica was crying hysterically. Richie and I reloaded as fast as we could. We heard a horrible crunching sound in the trees, like a dog eating a ham bone. We all looked at each other in shock and horror. It must have been getting close to daylight. The creature didn't seem to like light, as it would periodically throughout the night come and watch us, screech at us in the woods, but never come close to the firelight. It also fled from our flashlights. We all thought that as long as we kept the fire going, we would survive until daylight. If the creature fled from sun, we would make our escape. That's when it started to rain. We began throwing things onto the fire frantically, trying to keep the light alive. But the fire grew more and more dull as the rain beat down harder. The creature was inching closer as the light died. It evaded our flashlights with incredible speed and came almost within striking range. It was so close could smell it now, the smell of rotting flesh. We could see its black teeth in its rotting mouth, the veins standing out against its gray skin, the rotting flesh at the end of its claws, as it began grabbing at us, trying to pull us away. Richie and I opened fire directly at the monster, and it began to screech in pain and stumble backwards, only to regain its footing and lunge forward again. Just as we both emptied our magazines, Robert yelled, "Get down!" I looked over my shoulder and seen him brandishing a flare gun. Genius. It hates light. If we stick a flare in its flesh, it might just flee. But Robert done even better than that. He fired a bright ball of white phosphorus directly into the monster's screeching mouth. It flailed around horrendously as the flare burned away inside its mouth. It gave Richie and me enough time to reload and begin firing on it again. We were on the last of our ammo now. If it didn't die, we were fucked. Robert loaded another flare and let it fly into the monster. This one stuck into its chest, and it fell down. We swarmed it with whatever weapons we had left. Richie and I opened fire until we had nothing left, while the rest of the group jumped on it with knives and axes. It let out its last awful squelch as Erica drove a large, splitting axe into its head. We retreated back to the camp, watching the monster cautiously, fearing it may jump back up and charge at any minute. We sat there not saying a word until the sun came up. As the rain subsided and the sun cleared through, we immediately left the camp, with everything left behind, and made for our vehicles. By the time we escaped the woods, we were completely exhausted, and as the shock subsided, we began to sob and try to make sense of what had happened in those woods. We decided that it would be best if we told everyone a grizzly bear had gotten our friends. Nobody would believe the true story anyway, and during the funerals, we vowed to never speak of it again. I don't speak to my old friends much these days. We mostly went our separate ways after the incident. The only one I did speak to was Richie, but he committed suicide about a year after it happened, with the very same shotgun he held his ground with on that dreadful night. And on nights where I can't drink the image out of my mind, it comes to me in my dreams, screeching rabidly, flailing, ready to kill.